What if your life could change in a single moment, not through a lottery ticket or a lucky guess, but because of who you are when you think no one of consequence is watching? For Clara Hayes, a 24-year-old waitress drowning in debt and despair, her life was a relentless cycle of long shifts, mounting medical bills, and the fading hope for her younger brother's future. She had no idea that a quiet, solitary man who sat in her section every Tuesday was not just another customer. He was an unseen judge, and she was taking a test of character, patience, and grace under pressure. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the story of how one ordinary evening, one impossible customer, and one billionaire, hiding in plain sight, collided to change a young woman's life forever. The alarm on Clara Hayes' phone was a cruel, chirping bird announcing another day she couldn't afford to miss. 6:00 a.m. The pre-dawn light of New York City filtered through her small, smudged window, casting long shadows across the tiny apartment she shared with her mother, Sarah, and her younger brother, Leo. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and the faint antiseptic smell of Leo's nebulizer. Clara swung her legs out of bed, her muscles aching in a way that felt far too old for 24. A quick glance at the corkboard above her desk was her morning ritual of self-inflicted torture. Pinned there, overlapping like fallen leaves, were the bills. The rent past due, the electricity threatening disconnection, and the ones that made her stomach clench into a tight, painful knot, the hospital invoices. Thick, cream-colored envelopes filled with figures that seemed more like astronomical distances than monetary amounts. Leo at 16 was supposed to be worried about high school exams and asking girls to dances. Instead, his life was a timetable of doctor's appointments, respiratory therapy sessions, and medication schedules. He had cystic fibrosis, a relentless progressive genetic disease that attacked his lungs and digestive system. Every breath he took was a victory, and every victory came with a price tag. Morning, sleepyhead. Her mother's voice, perpetually tired, but always soft, came from the small kitchen. Sarah was already up, packing Leo's lunch for his specialized school, carefully measuring out the pancreatic enzymes he needed to digest his food. "Morning, Mum," Clara mumbled, pulling on her uniform, a crisp white shirt and black slacks. She worked at the Gilded Spoon, a bistro in Midtown that catered to a mix of business lunchers and tourists. The name was fancier than the place itself, but it paid the bills. Or more accurately, it paid a fraction of them. Her shift didn't start until 11:00 a.m., but first she had another job. From 7:30 to 10:30, she was a dog walker. The extra $150 a week was the difference between buying groceries and skipping meals. As she laced up her worn-out sneakers, Leo shuffled out of his room, a small, hacking cough shaking his thin frame. "Hey, Clara." "Hey, kiddo." She forced a bright smile. "Ready to ace that history test?" He gave a weak thumbs up. "As ready as I'll ever be." The three of them had a silent, choreographed morning routine born of necessity. Sarah focused on Leo, ensuring he had his vest on a high-frequency chest wall oscillation device that helped break up the mucus in his lungs. Clara made coffee, packed her own meager lunch, and laid out her Gilded Spoon uniform. The unspoken tension in the apartment was a constant humming thing. It was the fear of the next infection, the next hospital stay, the next bill they couldn't pay. Their insurance, a basic plan from the state marketplace, was a sieve with high deductibles and a frustrating list of non-covered experimental treatments. One of those treatments, a new modulator therapy developed by a team led by a renowned physician, Dr. Isabella Rossi, was Leo's best hope. It was also financially impossible, a distant star in a galaxy of debt. After walking 3 different dogs, a hyperactive golden retriever named Max, a pair of yapping poodles, and a grumpy bulldog named Winston, Clara rushed home, showered in 5 minutes, and changed into her waitress uniform. The subway ride to Midtown was a blur of faces, each person lost in their own world. Clara's world was a spreadsheet of expenses and a prayer for good tips. The Gilded Spoon was already buzzing when she arrived. Her friend and fellow waitress Maria was polishing cutlery at the service station. "Rough morning?" Maria asked, her eyes sympathetic. "The usual." Clara sighed, tying her apron. Winston the bulldog tried to eat a pigeon. "Whole." Maria chuckled, but it faded quickly. "How's Leo?" "He's okay. Hanging in there. Just tired." It was the word she always used. It was easier than saying scared. The lunch rush was a controlled chaos of taking orders, refilling drinks, and placating impatient customers. Clara moved through it all with an efficiency born of practice. She was good at her job. She could remember complex orders, anticipate a customer's needs, and maintain a pleasant demeanor, even when her feet were screaming and her mind was on a hospital bill. It was during the late afternoon lull, that quiet period between lunch and dinner, that he would often appear. The man in the corner booth. He was a Tuesday regular, as reliable as the specials menu. He was probably in his late 50s, always impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, but never flashy. He had silver-grey hair, kind eyes, that seemed to hold a touch of sadness, and he always sat alone facing the window. He would order the same thing every time, a black coffee and the soup of the day. He never used his phone. He never read a newspaper. He just sat, sipped his coffee, and watched the city go by. To Clara, he was simply Mr. Tuesday. She didn't know his name. He always paid in cash, leaving a precise 20% tip. He was a pleasant, low-maintenance customer, a small island of calm in her hectic day. She approached his booth. "Good afternoon. The usual for you today." The man looked up, and a small, polite one touched his lips. "Hello, Clara. Yes, please. And what is the soup today?" "It's a roasted tomato and basil," she said. "It's actually very good." "That sounds lovely. Thank you." His name was Julio Rafoncouf, a name that, if spoken in the boardrooms of Wall Street or the philanthropic galas of the Upper East Side, would have commanded immediate attention and respect. As the CEO and founder of Croft Enterprises, a global tech and logistics empire, his net worth was a figure with 10 zeros. But here in the Gilded Spoon, he was just a quiet man with a sad story. This bistro years ago, before it was gilded, was a simple diner. It was where he had his first date with his late wife Eleanor. She had passed away 3 years prior, after a long battle with cancer. His weekly visit was a pilgrimage, a quiet ritual to feel close to her memory. He came to remember a simpler time before the billions, when their future was an unwritten page. He watched Clara as she walked away. He wasn't just observing the city. He was observing her. He'd noticed her weeks ago. He saw the faint weariness in her eyes, the worn-out soles of her shoes, but also the genuine warmth in her smile when she talked to an elderly couple, the patience she showed a family with screaming children. She reminded him of Eleanor, not in looks but in spirit. There was a quiet strength, a resilience, an innate decency about her. Today, however, Julian Croft wasn't just there to reminisce. He had a purpose. He had decided to intervene in her life, but not in the way most billionaires would. He wouldn't just write a check. That was too easy, too impersonal. Eleanor had always believed that true charity wasn't about giving money, but about investing in people. First, he needed to be sure. He needed to see her character tested, to see if the grace he perceived was real or just a professional veneer. And he knew that the perfect test was about to walk through the door. At precisely 3:15 p.m., the bell above the bistro's door chimed aggressively. The man who entered was the human embodiment of a stock market bull, broad-shouldered, slicked-back hair, wearing a suit that was offensively expensive and a Bluetooth earpiece that blinked with self-importance. He scanned the half-empty room with a look of disdain, as if he'd expected a red carpet. "Table, now!" He barked at the hostess, who flinched. He was seated in Clara's section, in a booth directly across from Julian Croft. Maria leaned over to Clara at the service station. "Uh-oh. Brace yourself. That's Harrison Sterling, hedge fund guy. He comes in sometimes and terrorizes everyone. Complains about the water temperature." "Got it," Clara said, taking a deep breath. She pasted on her professional smile and approached the table. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Mr. Sterling didn't look up from his phone, which he was scrolling through with furious jabbing motions of his thumb. "Sparkling water, San Pellegrino, not Perrier. And make sure the lime is fresh cut, not one of those sad brown-edged ones you've had sitting out all day." "Of course, sir," Clara said, her smile not wavering. From his corner booth, Julian Croft watched the exchange. This was the catalyst. He knew of Harrison Sterling. Croft Enterprises had recently considered and rejected a partnership with Sterling's firm. Their due diligence report had described Sterling as brilliant, ruthless, and possessing the ethical compass of a shark. He was perfect. Clara returned with the water, placing it down gently. Sterling picked up the glass, swirled it, and took a sip. "It's barely chilled. Did you just pour this from a bottle sitting on the counter?" "No, sir. It came directly from the refrigerator. I can bring you a glass of ice if you'd like." "No, I don't want a glass of ice. I want cold water." "Is that a difficult concept?" he snapped. "Just leave it. What's your steak special?" "Our special today is a New York strip with a red wine reduction served with roasted garlic, mashed potatoes, and asparagus," Clara recited calmly. "Fine, I'll have that. Medium rare. And I mean medium rare. Pink all the way through warm center. Not red and cold, not a hint of brown. If your chef can't handle that, tell me now, so I don't waste my time." "Our chef is excellent, sir. I'm sure it will be to your liking," she said, her voice even. Julian took a slow sip of his coffee, his eyes never leaving the scene. He saw the slight tightening of Clara's jaw, the disciplined control in her posture. She absorbed the man's hostility without reflecting it back. It was like watching a seawall stand firm against a battering wave. The steak arrived. Clara placed it before Mr. Sterling with a polite, "Enjoy your meal, sir." Sterling picked up his steak knife, sliced into the very center, and pushed the two halves apart. He stared at it for a long moment. From Julian's vantage point, it looked perfectly cooked. "What did I say?" Sterling said, his voice dangerously low. He pointed at the steak with his knife. "What is this?" "This is medium. There's brown on the edges. Are you deaf or just incompetent?" "Sir, I can assure you I put the order in exactly as you requested," Clara said softly, her heart starting to pound. She knew this was coming. "If it's not to your satisfaction, I would be happy to take it back to the kitchen and have them prepare another one for you." "Oh, you'd be happy to," he sneered, his voice rising, drawing the attention of the few other customers. so I can wait another 20 minutes while your excellent chef tries to figure out the difference between pink and brown. No, I don't have time for this. He looked around the table, his eyes landing on his expensive silk tie. Then, in a movement that was just a little too deliberate, his elbow knocked his full glass of red wine. It arced perfectly, splashing across the white tablecloth and more dramatically all over the front of his light grey suit and his tie. "Now look what you've done!" he roared, jumping to his feet. "You clumsy idiot! This is a Brioni suit. It costs more than you make in a month." Clara froze for a split second. She knew with absolute certainty that he had done it on purpose. The angle, the timing. It was a calculated act of cruelty. Her mind screamed. She wanted to yell, to call him out, to tell him what a pathetic excuse for a human being he was. She could feel the hot flush of anger and humiliation creep up her neck. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. But then an image of Leo smiling weakly from his hospital bed during his last bout of pneumonia flashed through her mind. This job, this humiliation, it was for him. Losing it was not an option. She unclenched her fists. She grabbed a clean napkin from the next table and stepped forward. "Sir, I am so sorry," she said, her voice shaking only slightly. "Please let me help." "Don't touch me," he yelled, batting her hand away. "Just get me the check, and you can be damn sure I'm not paying for this steak. And the cost of dry cleaning this suit is coming out of your tip." He threw a $100 bill on the table, far more than enough to cover the uneaten meal, and stormed out of the bistro, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Clara stood motionless for a moment, the entire restaurant's eyes on her. She felt small, exposed, and utterly defeated. She slowly began to clear the disastrous table, her hands trembling as she picked up the wine-soaked napkins. Maria rushed over. "Clara, are you okay? I saw the whole thing. He did that on purpose, the monster." "I'm fine," Clara whispered, not meeting her eyes. "It's fine." She took the bill to the register. The manager, a perpetually stressed man named David, had seen the end of the confrontation. "Don't worry about it, Clara," he said, his tone surprisingly gentle. "That guy's a known jackass. We're not taking anything from your pay." But the damage was done. The humiliation lingered like a foul odor. She finished her shift in a haze, the professional smile feeling like a lead weight on her face. As she was wiping down her last table, she noticed that the quiet man in the corner, Mr. Tuesday, had left. She went to his booth to clear it. The coffee cup was empty, the soup bowl clean. Underneath the saucer there was a neat stack of cash. She picked it up to count it. It was his usual soup and coffee, a bill of about $12. She counted the money. 100, 200, 300, 400, $500. Clara stared at the 5 crisp $100 bills. Her breath caught in her throat. This had to be a mistake, a massive, insane mistake. He must have pulled out the wrong bills. She looked around wildly, hoping to see him walking back, but the street outside was just a blur of anonymous pedestrians. $500. That was more than her dog-walking money for 3 weeks. It was a utility bill. It was a significant portion of their monthly grocery budget. It was a drop in the ocean of their medical debt, but right now it felt like a lifeline. Her first instinct, a powerful gut reaction, was to run after him, to return the money. This wasn't right. It felt like pity money, a handout, after the scene Sterling had caused. But he was gone. She stood there holding the cash, her mind reeling. Who was this man? Why would he do this? For a brief, dizzying moment, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't quite hope, but it was a crack in the wall of her despair, letting in a single baffling ray of light. The $500 felt illicit in her pocket, a heavy secret weighing down her apron. Clara's shift ended in a fog of confusion. She showed the money to Maria, whose eyes went wide. "No way," Maria breathed. "The quiet guy, Mr. Sad Eyes. He must have made a mistake," Clara insisted, though a part of her was starting to wonder. No one tips $500 on a $12 check. "Maybe he saw what that Sterling creep did and felt bad for you," Maria suggested. "Like restore your faith in humanity money." "But who carries that much cash and just leaves it?" Clara's mind raced. Her ingrained honesty warred with her crushing desperation. The money could be put to immediate critical use. It could buy Leo's next refill of expensive non-generic medication without having to use the credit card that was already screaming at its limit. She decided on a compromise. She would put the money in an envelope right for the gentleman in the corner booth Tuesday on it, and leave it with her manager David. If the man came back, it would be there for him. If he didn't, well, she would cross that bridge next week. It was the only thing that felt right. She handed the envelope to David, explaining the situation. He looked at her impressed. "You're a good kid, Clara. Most people would have pocketed that without a second thought." The walk home felt different. The weight of the world was still on her shoulders, but the acute sting of the afternoon's humiliation had been soothed by a stranger's baffling act of generosity, even if she was trying to refuse it. A week passed. Life fell back into its grueling rhythm. Leo had a difficult few days, his cough worsening and the shadow of a potential hospital visit loomed large. The envelope at the Gilded Spoon remained untouched. Mr. Tuesday did not return. Clara found herself scanning the restaurant every afternoon, a knot of anticipation in her stomach. By the following Monday, David gave the envelope back to her. "He's not coming back for it, Clara. It's yours. You earned it." She finally reluctantly accepted it. That night, she paid for Leo's medication in cash. The relief was so profound, it almost made her cry. 2 days later, on a Thursday, an official-looking letter arrived in their mailbox, wedged between a pizza flyer and another medical bill. It was addressed to Ms. Clara Hayes. The envelope was thick, made of expensive linen paper, with an embossed return address, Vance and Associates Attorneys at Law. Her mother saw it first. "Clara, what's this? Are we being sued?" Panic flared in her eyes. It was their default reaction to anything official. "No, Mum, of course not. We haven't done anything," Clara said, trying to sound reassuring as she took the letter. Her own heart was thumping. Lawyers meant trouble. She slit it open with a kitchen knife, her hands trembling slightly. The letter was brief and formal. "Dear Ms. Hayes, this firm represents an anonymous benefactor who has taken an interest in your circumstances. Our client has established a private grant for which you have been selected as the sole recipient. The grant provides a monthly stipend of $5,000 for a period of 12 months to be used at your discretion for personal and familial support. To discuss the terms and initiate the process, please contact my office to schedule an appointment at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Arthur Vance-esque. Senior Partner, Vance and Associates." Clara read it once, then twice, then a third time out loud for her mother. Sarah sank into a kitchen chair, her hand over her mouth. $5,000 a month? Sarah whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "For a year. That's $60,000. It was a preposterous, life-altering amount of money. It was enough to cover all their living expenses. It was enough to erase their credit card debt. It was enough to let her quit the dog-walking job, to focus solely on the gilded spoon, and be home more for Leo. It was enough to breathe. But it made no sense. "It's a scam, Mum." Clara said the words, tasting like ash in her mouth. "It has to be. Anonymous benefactor, people don't just give away that kind of money to a stranger." "But why? What would they be scamming us for? They're not asking for money." "They'll ask for my bank details, my social security number. It's some kind of identity theft thing," Clara reasoned, her cynical New Yorker brain taking over. "Too good to be true, Mum. It always is." Despite her skepticism, a tiny, persistent voice in the back of her mind whispered, "What if it's not?" She thought of the $500 tip. That was real. It had felt just as impossible. But it had been real. Could this be connected? Could Mr. Tuesday be this anonymous benefactor? The idea was so outlandish, she immediately dismissed it. He was just a quiet, kind man who felt sorry for her. He wasn't some eccentric millionaire. For 2 days, the letter sat on their kitchen counter, a beacon of impossible hope and profound suspicion. Clara couldn't stop thinking about it. At work, she was distracted, nearly dropping a tray of glasses. At home, she found herself staring at the envelope. Finally urged on by Maria, "What have you got to lose? Just go and listen. Don't sign anything." And her mother's desperate hope, Clara called the number. She was put through to a crisp professional secretary who scheduled an appointment for the following Monday. The offices of Vance and Associates were on the 40th floor of a skyscraper overlooking Central Park. The lobby was a symphony of marble, polished brass, and hushed quiet. Clara, in her nicest non-uniform clothes, a simple black dress and flats, felt entirely out of place. She was led into a conference room with a window that seemed to swallow half the sky. Arthur Vance rose to greet her. He was a man in his 60s, with thinning white hair, a severe suit, and eyes that seemed to appraise and calculate everything they saw. He was polite, but emitted no warmth whatsoever. "Miss Hayes, thank you for coming. Please sit." He gestured to a large leather chair. Clara sat on the edge of it, clutching her purse. "I will be direct, as I'm sure you are a busy woman." Vance began opening a file on the table. "My client, who insists on complete anonymity, has instructed me to facilitate this grant. There are very few conditions. The funds will be deposited into an account of your choosing on the 1st of every month. The money is yours, tax-free, to do with as you see fit." Clara's mind was racing. It was real. It was actually real. 5,000 a month. For a year. "Correct," Vance said, his face impassive. "Why?" The word burst out of her, the one question that had been tormenting her. "Why me, I don't understand. I'm nobody." Arthur Vance looked at her, and for the first time, a flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. "My client believes in rewarding certain qualities: integrity, resilience, grace under pressure. Let's just say you were observed displaying these qualities in a trying situation." The scene with Harrison Sterling. It had to be. The memory sent a fresh wave of humiliation through her. So someone else saw it. Someone with an obscene amount of money. The man who left the tip, Clara stated more than asked. Vance gave a slight, non-committal shrug. "As I said, my client insists on anonymity. That is the primary condition." He slid a document across the table. "This is a simple agreement. It states that you will not make any attempt to discover the identity of your benefactor or publicize this arrangement. A simple non-disclosure agreement. It all seemed too simple, too clean. There had to be a catch. That's it, I just signed this, and a stranger gives me $60,000. For what? For being you, Ms. Hayes? Vance said, his voice flat. He then added one more detail. There is one small additional request, though it is not legally binding. My client would appreciate a brief one-page letter sent to my office each month. Not a financial accounting, but a personal one. A few paragraphs on how things are going, how your family is, how you are using your time. Think of it as a personal update for a silent investor in your well-being. That was the catch. It wasn't financial, it was personal. It felt strange, intrusive, like she was some sort of project, a social experiment, to be observed and reported on from a distance. She looked from the contract to Vance's unreadable face, and then out the window at the vast, indifferent city below. This was a crossroads, a bizarre, unbelievable, life-changing crossroads. She could walk away back to her world of crushing debt and quiet desperation. Or she could sign the paper, accept the money from a mysterious puppet master, and trade a small piece of her privacy for her family's future. "Can I have a day to think about it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Of course," Arthur Vance said, steepling his fingers. "Take all the time you need." But his tone implied that he already knew what her answer would be. Clara left the law office in a daze, the sterile air of the 40th floor clinging to her like a strange perfume. She walked for blocks without direction, the NDA and the proposed agreement feeling heavy in her purse. The monthly letter. It was the part that bothered her most. It changed the dynamic from a simple anonymous gift into an ongoing relationship, albeit a one-sided one. She would be writing letters to a ghost, a faceless benefactor who had, for some reason, put her life under a microscope. She discussed it with her mother that evening. Sarah, ever the pragmatist born of hardship, saw it differently. A letter a month. Clara. I write a longer grocery list every week. What's the harm? You tell this person that we're grateful that Leo is doing a little better, that you're less stressed. It's nothing. For $60,000, I'd write them a novel. Maria had a similar take. Think of it like a journal, but one you mail to a rich weirdo. Who cares, Clara? This is the break you've been praying for. Don't let your pride get in the way. Her pride. Was that what it was? It felt more like self-preservation. Her life was already so exposed financially, emotionally. The idea of performing her life for an unseen audience felt invasive. The decision, however, was made for her 2 days later. She was at home on her day off when the call came from Leo's pulmonologist. His latest lung function test results were in, and they weren't good. His FEV1, a key measure of the amount of air he could forcibly exhale in 1 second, had dropped below 40%. It was a critical threshold, the line between moderate and severe disease. The doctor spoke in calm clinical terms about increasing his airway clearance therapy and starting a new powerful antibiotic. But Clara could hear the unspoken urgency. After the call, she found Leo in his room, not playing his video game, but just sitting on his bed, staring at the wall. The ever-present nebulizer mask was on the nightstand next to him. "Hey," she said softly, sitting beside him. "I heard," he said, his voice raspy. "I'm getting worse, aren't I?" Clara's heart shattered. "No, Leo. It's just a setback. We'll fight it. We always do." "I'm tired of fighting," he whispered, and for the first time Clara saw not just sickness in her brother, but true despair. I'm tired of being the sick kid. I'm tired of you and Mum working so hard and still being broke because of me." "Don't you ever say that," she said fiercely, pulling him into a hug. "Ever. You are not a burden. You are the reason we fight." That night, as she lay in bed, listening to the strained rhythm of his coughing from the next room, all her reservations about the grant evaporated. Her pride, her suspicions, her discomfort, they were luxuries she couldn't afford. Leo's despair was a fire alarm she could not ignore. This wasn't about her anymore. The next morning, she called Arthur Vance's office and said she would accept. The first deposit of $5,000 appeared in her bank account 2 days later. Staring at the number on her banking app felt surreal. It was a cushion, a safety net, a deep, steadying breath after years of holding her own. Her first act was to pay off their most high-interest credit card in full. Her second was to tell her manager at the dog-walking agency that she wouldn't be coming back. Her third and most satisfying was to buy a week's worth of groceries without checking the price of a single item. She bought Leo the expensive protein shakes he liked, but they could rarely afford. She bought her mother a bottle of the nice hand lotion she loved. Small things, but they felt monumental. True to her word, at the end of the month, she sat down to write the first letter. It was awkward and stilted. "Dear benefactor, I'm writing as requested by Mr. Vance. Thank you for the first payment. It has already made a significant difference for my family. My mother is less worried, and I was able to purchase some nutritional supplements for my brother Leo that we believe are helping. I have also been able to leave my second job, which gives me more time to be home with him. Things are better, thank you. Sincerely, Clara Hayes." She mailed it off, feeling like she was posting a message into the void. The next 2 months fell into a new, more manageable routine. The constant grinding panic over money receded, replaced by a low-level hum of anxiety about Leo's health. The grant didn't cure his disease, but it removed the suffocating layer of financial stress that had made everything 10 times harder. Clara even started to smile more at work. She felt lighter. Her monthly letters became a little more personal. She wrote about a funny thing Leo said about a movie she and her mother watched about the changing seasons seen from the window of the Gilded Spoon. She never wrote about their fears or the doctor's appointments. She kept it light, a curated snapshot of a life made easier, just as she assumed the benefactor would want. Then in the 4th month, everything changed again. Leo caught a cold, which for him quickly spiraled into a serious chest infection. He was admitted to the hospital with pneumonia, his breathing ragged, his oxygen levels dangerously low. Clara and her mother spent their days in the sterile, beige-colored hospital room, watching the numbers on the monitors, their lives shrinking to the space of those 4 walls. The money from the grant was a blessing, allowing Clara to take unpaid time off work without a second thought. But it was powerless against the virus attacking her brother's lungs. One afternoon, a new doctor came into the room. She was younger than Leo's usual pulmonologist, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an air of compassionate authority. Her name badge read, Dr. Isabella Rossi. Clara's head snapped up. Dr. Rossi, the name from the articles the leader of the research on the new modulator therapy. "You're," Clara started. "I'm a consulting physician on this floor," Dr. Rossi said kindly. "I've been reviewing Leo's case with Dr. Evans. He has a very persistent pseudomonas infection. We're hitting it hard with IV antibiotics, but his underlying lung function is, as you know, very poor." She pulled up a chair, speaking to them, not as a distant authority figure, but as a partner in Leo's care. She explained the challenges, the risks. And then she said the words that changed everything. Leo is exactly the kind of patient my research is designed to help. The new combination modulator therapy, VX771, has shown remarkable results in patients with his specific genetic mutations. It doesn't just treat the symptoms, it corrects the fundamental protein folding defect at a cellular level. We know, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. We've read about it. But our insurance won't cover it. They call it experimental. It is technically, Dr. Rossi acknowledged, but we have a compassionate use program for critical cases. The problem is the waiting list is over a year long, and the pharmaceutical company that produces it charges an astronomical amount. Clara felt the familiar despair wash over her. Another door of hope firmly locked. However, Dr. Rossi continued, leaning forward. There is another way. My entire research program, including the compassionate use slots, is underwritten by a private foundation, the Eleanor Croft Foundation for Rare Pediatric Diseases. They occasionally allow me to personally recommend a patient for immediate inclusion, bypassing the list if the circumstances are dire and I believe the potential for improvement is high. They cover all costs. Clara and Sarah stared at her, speechless. I've been reviewing Leo's charts for the last 2 days, Dr. Rossi said. He is a perfect candidate. I want to put his name forward to the Foundation's board. Hope, fierce and blinding, surged through Clara. You would do that? Yes, Dr. Rossi said. I can't make any promises. The Foundation's director has the final say. But I believe Leo has a very strong case. That night, for the first time in a week, Clara felt a sense of possibility. The Eleanor Croft Foundation. She'd never heard of it, but the name stuck in her head. When she got home for a few hours of sleep, she sat down to write her monthly letter to her anonymous benefactor. This time it was different. All the artifice fell away. She didn't write about funny anecdotes or the changing seasons. She wrote the truth. Dear benefactor, I don't know who you are or why you chose to help us, but I feel I have to tell you what's happening. My brother Leo is in the hospital. He's very sick. We were starting to lose hope. But today we met a doctor named Isabella Rossi. She runs a research program for a new therapy that could save Leo's life. She is recommending him for a special compassionate use spot funded by something called the Eleanor Croft Foundation. It feels like a miracle, a 1 in a million chance. We are all praying that this foundation says yes. I know this is not what you signed up to hear about. I know this is probably more than you wanted to know. But right now, it's my entire world. Thank you for the grant. Because of you, I can be by his side instead of serving coffee. You have given us the ability to face this without worrying about the rent. You have given us a gift I can never repay. Sincerely, Clara Hayes. She sealed the envelope and sent it off, a raw, desperate plea launched into the unknown. She had no idea it was a message in a bottle that was about to arrive directly on the shore of the one man who could turn the tide. Julian Croft sat in his cavernous home office, a room panelled in dark mahogany and lined with books. The space overlooking a private manicured garden in his Upper East Side townhouse was his sanctuary and his prison. It was filled with memories of Eleanor. Her favorite armchair sat by the fireplace, empty. Her portrait, painted a decade ago, hung above the mantel, her warm, intelligent eyes seeming to follow him. On his large, uncluttered desk lay a single, hand-delivered envelope from Arthur Vance's office. It was Clara's 4th letter. He had read the previous 3 with a detached sense of satisfaction. They were polite, grateful, and confirmed his initial assessment. She was using the money responsibly, finding relief, and her character remained intact. The letters were a confirmation that his investment was sound. But this one was different. He slit it open and read. As his eyes moved across her neat, heartfelt script, his carefully constructed emotional distance crumbled. Leo in the hospital, losing hope. Dr. Isabella Rossi, Eleanor Croft Foundation. Julian put the letter down, his hand trembling slightly. It felt as if two separate parallel lines in his universe had suddenly impossibly converged. Dr. Rossi's work was his passion project, the most meaningful part of his philanthropic efforts. He had established the foundation in Eleanor's name because she had been a fierce advocate for children's health. He sat on the board. He was the director. He had the final say. He read the letter again. The raw honesty, the desperation, the gratitude, it was all there. This wasn't a project report. This was a young woman's soul laid bare. He looked up at Eleanor's portrait. He could almost hear her voice, clear as day. "Well, what are you waiting for, Julian?" He picked up his private line and dialed Arthur Vance. "Arthur, cancel my afternoon. And I need you to arrange a meeting with Ms. Hayes, not at your office, at the Foundation's headquarters, tomorrow at 2. And Arthur, I'll be there." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you certain, Julian?" The entire arrangement was predicated on anonymity. "I am certain," Julian said, his voice firm. "Things have changed. It's time." The next day, Clara received a call from Arthur Vance's secretary. The crisp, formal voice requested her presence at a meeting regarding an urgent update on her grant. She was given an address, not the law firm, but a stately brownstone near Gramercy Park. The sign by the door, in elegant, understated brass letters, read, "The Eleanor Croft Foundation." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. It couldn't be a coincidence. Had her letter somehow been passed along? Was she in trouble for overstepping? Her mind raced with 1,000 anxious possibilities as she rode the subway downtown. She was shown into a quiet, sunlit library. It wasn't an office. It was warm and inviting, filled with books and comfortable-looking furniture. A woman offered her tea, which she accepted with a shaky hand. A few minutes later, the door opened. Arthur Vance walked in, his expression as severe as ever. But he was not alone. Behind him was a man she recognized instantly. Not from the news, not from a magazine, from the corner booth. It was Mr. Tuesday. Clara stood up so quickly her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. She stared at him, her mind refusing to connect the dots. The quiet, sad-eyed man from the bistro, the one who drank coffee and soup, was here. With the lawyer, at the headquarters of the foundation that held Leo's life in its hands. "Clara," the man said, his voice gentle, just as she remembered it. "Please sit. I apologize for the deception. My name is Julian Croft." Clara sank back into her chair, her teacup rattling in its saucer. "You," she whispered, looking from him to Vance and back again. "The tip. The grant." "It was you?" "Yes," Julian said, taking the seat opposite her. Arthur Vance stood discreetly by the door. "It was all me." "But why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why me?" Julian leaned forward, his eyes was kind. "I'm going to tell you a story, if you'll let me. Years ago, that bistro, the Gilded Spoon, it was just a little diner. It was where I took my wife, Eleanor, on our first date. We were young, we had nothing. After she passed away, I started going back, just to sit and remember. He gestured to a portrait on the wall, not the one from his office, but a smaller, more intimate one, of a smiling, vibrant woman. It was the woman from his stories, the unseen force in the room. I started noticing you, he continued. I saw how hard you worked. I saw how you treated everyone with the same kindness and dignity, whether they were a noisy family or a lonely old man. You never let the stress of your job sour your spirit. You reminded me so much of her. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Eleanor believed that character was the only true currency. I wanted to help you, but I wanted to do it her way, not just a handout. So I tested you. I'm not proud of it, but I had Mr. Sterling, who I knew to be a difficult man, put you through the ringer. I wanted to see what would happen when you were pushed to your limit. Clara thought back to that horrible afternoon, the spilled wine, the searing humiliation. You saw that. I saw everything, Julian said softly. I saw you absorb his cruelty and respond with professionalism and grace. I saw you stand tall when he tried to make you small, and I knew then that my instinct about you was right. You have a core of integrity that money can't buy. He picked up her letter from the table beside him, and then I received this. Clara's face flushed. When I read that Dr. Rossi wanted to help your brother, when I saw the name of my own foundation in your letter, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. It was something more. It was a sign that I needed to stop hiding in the shadows. He looked her directly in the eye, his gaze unwavering. Clara, the Eleanor Croft Foundation is my foundation. I am the director. I read Dr. Rossi's recommendation for Leo this morning. There is no waiting list for him. There is no board to convince. The answer is yes. We will cover everything. The treatment, the hospital stay, any associated costs. Everything. The room seemed to tilt. The words hit Clara with the force of a physical wave, washing away years of fear and anxiety in a single overwhelming surge. Tears she hadn't even realized she was holding back began to stream down her face. It wasn't just relief. It was a profound, earth-shattering sense of disbelief of a world that had suddenly righted itself in the most impossible way. I don't know what to say, she stammered through her tears. You don't have to say anything, Julian said, his own eyes glistening. Eleanor always used to say, don't just give people a fish, give them a fishing rod. The grant was the fish to get you through the day. But this is the fishing rod. And I have one more proposition for you when you're ready. Clara looked at him, at the face of the man who had been a quiet regular, a mysterious benefactor, and was now impossibly her family savior. Her life and Leo's would never be the same. The test was over, and a new chapter, one she could never have imagined, was about to begin. The weeks following the revelation at the foundation were a blur of hope made real. Leo was immediately enrolled in Dr. Rossi's program. The intimidating stacks of paperwork and financial barriers that had defined their lives simply dissolved. He began the new modulator therapy, a pair of pills taken each morning, and the change was nothing short of miraculous. It wasn't an overnight cure, but a steady, undeniable ascent from the depths. His persistent, rattling cough softened into an occasional rasp. Color returned to his cheeks, and with it a brightness to his eyes that Clara hadn't seen in years. For the first time, their small apartment was filled not with the sound of a nebulizer, but with Leo's easy laughter. 2 months later, with Leo's health stable and improving daily, Julian Croft invited Clara to meet. He chose a familiar location, the corner booth at the Gilded Spoon. Seeing him there in the place where their story began felt like closing a circle. "You look happy, Clara," Julian said, his smile genuine. "I am," she replied. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe. Julian, I can never thank you enough. Watching Leo get better is all the thanks I need," he said gently. "But it brings us to the future. The grant I established for you will run its course. I could simply renew it, but I don't believe that's what you truly want. You are a person of action and integrity, not someone content to be a passive recipient." He was right. The security had been a blessing, but she yearned for purpose. "The Eleanor Croft Foundation does more than fund research," Julian continued, his tone shifting from friendly to purposeful. "We have a large community outreach division to support families. It's the heart of our mission, but it's run by people who understand theory, not reality. They haven't lived with the constant grinding fear for a loved one's life. You have." He leaned forward, his gaze direct. "I want to offer you a job, Clara, as a family liaison officer. You would be the first point of contact for families like your own, guiding them, advocating for them. Your experience, your empathy is more valuable than any university degree. We will provide all the training and a salary that ensures your family is secure. This isn't charity. It's an offer to turn your hardship into a source of strength for others." Tears filled Clara's eyes, but they were tears of profound joy. He wasn't offering her a safety net. He was offering her a ladder. He saw her not as a project to be saved, but as a person of value to be hired. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I would be honored." A few months later, Clara was thriving in her new role. One afternoon, she sat in on a high-level meeting where outside firms were pitching to manage the foundation's endowment. As the investment managers filed in, a familiar, arrogant figure strode to the front of the room. It was Harrison Sterling. He began his presentation oblivious to Clara's presence. He was slick, confident, and utterly unaware of the judgment he was about to face. When he finished, he looked at Julian, expecting praise. Julian was silent for a moment, his gaze unreadable. Then he spoke, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of command. "Mr. Sterling, your numbers are compelling. However, this foundation is built upon a principle far more important than market returns. That principle is integrity." Sterling's smug smile faltered. "Character," Julian continued, "is revealed in how you treat people you believe are beneath you. I had the opportunity to witness your character some months ago at a bistro. You were cruel and demeaning to a waitress for your own amusement." Sterling's face went white as his eyes darted around the room and finally landed on Clara. In that instant, the waitress he had terrorized and the composed professional across the table merged in his mind. The horror of his miscalculation was stark on his face. "The Eleanor Croft Foundation is a legacy of compassion," Julian stated, his voice turning to steel. "We would never place that legacy in the hands of a man who possesses so little. We will not be moving forward with your firm. Thank you for your time." Speechless and humiliated, Harrison Sterling gathered his things and practically fled the room. Clara felt not a surge of victory, but a quiet affirmation that decency had won. Her life had been irrevocably changed, not by a simple act of generosity, but by a profound recognition of her worth. Julian Croft hadn't just saved her from a life of struggle. He had empowered her to build a new one, brick by brick, with purpose and dignity. Clara Hayes's story is a powerful reminder that our true character isn't defined by the grand gestures we make, but by the small acts of kindness, patience, and integrity we show every single day. especially when we are under pressure. A single moment of grace witnessed by the right person unlocked a future she never thought possible. It wasn't about winning a lottery. It was about earning a recognition that was long overdue. Her life was changed forever, not just by the money, but by the opportunity to turn her own struggles into a source of strength and hope for others. What do you think? Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness from someone who deserved a bigger reward? Do you believe that character is still the most valuable currency in our modern world? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs a reminder that good deeds don't go unnoticed, and make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. We have so many more incredible true-life stories to share with you, stories that prove that hope, decency, and unexpected heroes are all around us. Thank you for watching.